Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. And good evening, everybody, wherever you may be. I've just seen somebody, Anna, in the chat. You can keep your cameras on. You can keep your cameras off if you want to. We will have a couple of breakout rooms sessions, so I do encourage you to have your cameras on when you're in the breakouts, at least. Okay. If you have any questions going on, please feel free just to ask in the chat. But I will be pausing, etc. I can't really see the chat, so Yevgenia will be helping with that this evening. So if I miss it, I apologize. But also just feel free just to speak as you want to. So thank you all for joining. Really, really do appreciate it. So I recently joined ICF Kazakhstan. Very happy to be a member, and thank you so much for hosting me this evening. So I've worked across. Well, I've been in China for more than 20 years, but working all across the Middle East, Southeast Asia, China, and now based back and forth between Kazakhstan and China as well. And I really see how firsthand, obviously being a foreigner in a foreign land for so many years, how cultural intelligence, or CQ as we call it, so like IQ, intelligence quotation, cultural quotient, it's a real differentiator for success, especially now with the way we're really globalized. So it's not just theory. I've developed something called the AAA model, which I'll talk about as we go through today, based on more than 20 years working in another culture or other cultures. So what I'd like to introduce tonight is a deep dive in how we can add cross-cultural coaching into our daily coaching practice. Because culture doesn't just mean language, it doesn't just mean the place you live or where you're from. It can also mean team culture, company culture. So if you're working with corporates, we know that can be a big struggle for people as well. So let's get started. So I've got a quick poll. If you'd like to scan the QR code, it's just one question, and I'd just love to see your answer to this before we begin. And the question is at the bottom: how often do you work with clients from different cultural backgrounds? So if anyone is in mainland China, I just realized that it doesn't work without a VPN. But I think most people aren't in mainland China. So if you could just scan that QR code on the screen for me, and we can see what the results are coming through. And what I'll do is I'll add the results to the slides later as well, and I'm happy to share this as a PDF with everybody too. Saying that, it's not loading for me now. Oh, there we go. There we go. Interesting. So what we're seeing here in the poll is about 43% are weekly, 43% monthly, 14% are daily. So quite interesting. We've now gone to 50% weekly because we've got more people. Would anybody who wrote weekly, would you care to share? How does that look like in your coaching practice or in your daily work? Would anyone care to share? Open forum.
I can share. For
Thank
me,
you.
the I work in a multinational company, so I'm facing the cross culture every day, and I also have coaching clients from the overseas and from inside the Kazakhstan as well. So
Mm,
interesting experience.
interesting. What are some of the challenges you might face?
Mm, maybe not so much of a challenge, but it's the awareness. It's the continuous awareness or awakeness to the differences in perceptions and interpretations that people may have. And
Right.
Terry, we also have a few comments in chat. Anna is saying cross-cultural clients interactions weekly, but the interpersonal cross-cultural interactions are on daily basis.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, both of you. So I'll add this to the slides, but our results are weekly 36%, monthly 36%, daily 18%, a few times a year 9%. So the way everything is going nowadays, especially if we're coaching and we're doing a lot of coaching online, working with people from all over the world, it's looking at this cultural intelligence and looking at cultures through a different lens. And that's what I hope to share with you today, not just seeing the world as we are, but seeing the world as it really is. So it's not optional anymore, I think. It's really essential for effective coaching and leadership. So what you'll learn today, some of the takeaways are that. So I'm just looking at my other screen here. So I've got a couple of screens. If it looks a bit strange, the four pillars of cultural intelligence, how it can transform your effectiveness. Direct connections between cultural intelligence and the ICF core competencies, and you will get your CCEs for today. Some real world applications from my own experience, and I'd love to hear your experiences we're going through today as well. Some tools that we can apply directly now, some strategies for being culturally responsive. Okay, so thank you again for sharing the poll. So it confirms that we're really operating in quite a globalized environment, and even again, as I said, with culture, it's about different teams, even different offices in different cities. We see that a lot in China, where the Beijing office will operate differently to the Shanghai office and operate differently to the Hong Kong office. Same in Kazakhstan with Almaty and Astana, completely different cities, and different ways of communicating and mindsets. So um, if you look at the slide here, if you look at the data, 70% of international ventures have struggled due to cultural misunderstandings. Harvard Business Review. I can give you countless examples of China here, how companies have come in and completely failed and been replaced by sort of the Chinese counterparts. So we had Uber for about a year, then it was gone. It's now a company called Didi, completely took over. Sort of like it's like Yandex basically. So it's basically the same as Yandex, although Yandex has English, so it's better. Then we also had IKEA is basically it's here, but it's not doing so well, and countless other brands. Google is no longer here because of the cultural aspects and also some political aspects. Also, 35% of organizations or organizations with higher cultural intelligence are more likely to outperform their peers. This is from the McKinsey Global Institute. I'm not going to read all of these for you, obviously. So if we look at the numbers, 70% of international ventures fail due to cultural misunderstandings. It's a massive failure rate. And it really highlights that the low cost of low CQ. Conversely, organizations with high cultural intelligence are 35% more likely to outperform their peers. And what does this tell us? It tells us that cultural fluency drives the bottom line. And for us as coaches, the impact is clear. And when we're culturally intelligent in our coaching, it leads to quite a significant improvement in cross-cultural communication for leaders. So we as coaches can be the change agents who can turn a cultural friction, is a way to say it, into a competitive advantage. And this is why developing CQ is, I feel, is the most strategic investment we can make in our coaching practice right now. And I'm saying this as well. I'm working on a couple of the major coaching platforms right now with people from all over the world. And I'm seeing, and I'd love to hear what you guys are seeing as well. A lot of the challenges that people are facing, or a lot of the opportunities for growth, are in communication, and really like not just across culture, but just in general communication. But I'm seeing a lot of friction, for example, between Chinese engineers and Indian engineers, where sort of direct and indirect communication, and those hierarchies across cultures as well are causing a lot of friction there. Any thoughts or any questions so far on this slide? I'd love to open that up to you all.
I can share something maybe. Did you hear me?
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, I've been having a lot of mic issues, so I wasn't sure. Um, I think for
Hi,
me,
Laurie.
the underlying thought is I've always worked in international settings with international teams, with colleagues from and based in different places, so fully mixed up. And I think where coaching makes a huge difference in the approach is the idea that you take people from where they are. Because what I've
Ah,
noticed overall is, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of that in there, but yes, there are styles and there are cultural realities that we cannot deny they're there. That's true. But there's also very different individuals. And so there's always a need to nuance and to go to the level of the individual and to have both an understanding for a cultural reality that might guide fears or defensiveness or the other way around or anything like this, but also to systematically apply and look at the individual beyond it, where coaching teaches us that. It teaches us to listen to that one person. And I
mm.
think this is where the mindset of a coach in an international team or setting can be very powerful, I guess.
Laurie, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It's something I'm going to touch on later as well. You know, when we're talking about culture, we do have to generalize a little bit when we're talking sort of maybe at a corporate or a country level. But of course, not everybody is their culture. It's also that the individual part as well. So that's something that we have to be very aware of. So not everybody in the US is hyper direct, and not everybody in Japan is indirect. So we also, as Laurie said, have to look at the individual too. Thank you so much for sharing. So if
Maybe
we
I
look at, go ahead,
this is Anna
please.
speaking. Evgenia challenged
Hi,
me
Anna.
to speak up. As somebody who's living in Germany, I can tell you that even intra-German cultural communications can be quite
Ah,
complex,
okay.
where it comes down to dialect sometimes, and sometimes to expectations to be, I don't know, be more the southern or northern living style, and it already
Right.
is challenging within Germany. And having lived
Yeah.
in Russia, Germany, Italy, and the United States, it becomes even more and more complex. And so, what I learned is the most important thing is ask questions, be curious, and stay with that. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly. So I find that here as well. So I work with a lot of the MNCs here in China, you know, for doing workshops around culture, around leadership, etc. And you'll often find from the HQ, whether it's Europe or whether it's you know, in the States, they want us to come in and just do exactly the same workshop in every city or every location in China because they say, well, China's just this one big country. But actually, if we didn't have Mandarin, we'd sort of be, I think we'd be similar to where India is, where India has, you know, you go 100 kilometers each way, you've got a different language and a different cuisine. China's basically the same. If, you know, Mandarin's only been around since 1950s. You know, it's a amalgamated composite language. And people do think very differently. The people in the north are more direct. And again, I'm generalizing. You know, people in the south think in a different way. So, Anna, exactly, it's like advantage we have is we have Mandarin, right? So everyone can communicate, but everyone uses it in different ways, and there's lots of different dialects. So exactly as Anna said, even within countries, you know, we have to keep that cultural awareness going as well. So cultural intelligence is essentially it's the capability to function effectively across these different cultures. So the definition, which I'll read out, obviously you can read it yourself, but it's the capability to relate and work effectively across cultures. It goes beyond cultural awareness or sensitivity. It's about developing the cognitive, motivational, and behavioral capacities to navigate cultural differences with skill and authenticity. So when I'm coaching or doing workshops, pure training on cultural intelligence, one thing that I need to keep in mind of people is if you're working in another culture, you still need to be authentic to yourself. So we're not saying change yourself, we're saying adapt. We'll see that when we come to the AAA model a little bit later. And Why does it matter for coaches? Well, for coaches, I feel that this capability, it's transformative because it allows us to ask culturally relevant and powerful questions that can really resonate with our clients' worldviews. And I think that's very important to ask those culturally relevant questions as well. So when we understand a client's cultural context, we build trust much faster and more deeply. And I'd like to say that it's a coaching practice without CQ, for me, is simply running on empty in today's global environment. Because the cultural intelligence really ensures the coaching is ethical, it's inclusive, and it's effective in supporting clients through their cross-cultural challenges. And this is based on the framework that I'm going to share with you. And this is really from my experience, really living and working here. And I also coach in Chinese as well. So I have to look at I have to ask my questions in a different way. I'm still direct, I'm still me, because we need to break through the indirectness of the language, but I still have to change the way I'm asking the questions and the insights I'm giving. Like, for example, a lot of online coaching, the Chinese client doesn't want to turn their camera on. And this is a cultural thing within China. Even within, work, when they're in work, they don't turn their cameras on, a lot of people. And it takes a few minutes for me to let them understand why it's so important, to be able, as we know, to be able to see the whole person, right? And that's a bit of a challenge itself sometimes. So here, excuse me, let's take some water. So there's a framework here, which is 4 parts. And look, the beauty of cultural intelligence is, many of you maybe have just heard of it for the first time, CQ, cultural intelligence, but it's not a vague concept. It's really measurable, and it's something that's developable as a capability built on these 4 pillars. So you can think of these as like the 4 engines for your cross-cultural effectiveness. So first of all, we have CQ drive. So this is motivation. So the motivational dimension, which is basically your interest or your coachee's interest, and confidence really to engage with cultural differences. And without this drive, the other pillars will remain dormant. So it's like if we don't have the energy or the motivation, the rest of it's not going to happen. So second is our cognition, it's CQ knowledge. So the cognitive dimension. So this is your understanding of how cultures are similar and different at the same time. And this gives you the map. So the third pillar is CQ strategy. So this is like metacognition. This is the metacognition piece, which is your ability to plan and adjust your mental models during an interaction. This is where you check your assumptions. And of course, before we go into a coaching session, we would have already checked our assumptions before we go in, right? And then finally, it's action. This is behavior, the behavioral dimension. This is where your ability to adapt to verbal and nonverbal behavior becomes really essential. So we need all 4 of these pillars working together to be truly effective. So I'll give you an example of the sort of the behavior. So for those of us in Kazakhstan and other areas, the first time I flew into Kazakhstan was on Air Astana, and a very nice service, etc. And there was 2 Chinese people sat next to me, and then 3 people in the next row. When the air crew came with the food, they didn't speak any Chinese. So she kept just saying, chicken or fish, chicken or fish. And I said, excuse me, what is the food? And she said, I am serving these people. I will come to you. And I said, I understand that, but I'd like to translate for you. And she said, mda, right? It's not even da, mda, right? For those of us that know Russian, right? My Russian's not very good. Anyway, I thought nothing of it. But as we're going off the plane, because I could be Russian or I could be Kazakh, right? So as we're going off the plane, she's saying, das vidanya, das vidanya, das vidanya. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. And as I went up to the door, she said, Dasvi, I smiled, and she changed to English and said goodbye straight away without thinking because I smiled. And later on a family trip with my father-in-law, who's Kazakh, we were at Isilkul in Kyrgyzstan, and I kept smiling at people and saying thank you. And he took me to one side and said, "Stop smiling at people. You've got to stop doing it." And I said, "I can't. It's just what we do." He said, "You can't do it because people," he said, "people will give us the evil eye." So just there on these little bits of understanding, a little bit funny, but even a smile is different, in behaviors and things like this. A smile can be different. A hand gesture can be different, and he still says it to this day when I go for dinner. He said, "Stop smiling. I can't stop smiling. It's what we do." So, yeah, it's funny, but it really informs you when you're learning about other cultures. It's really a smile is not already a smile, always a smile. A thumbs up is not always a thumbs up. Thinking about gestures and things as well. Um, but really, the only way to learn is by doing it, right? Are there any questions or any comments on this framework? I'd love to hear your thoughts, or on my smiling problems. Okay. Oh, I just saw Sas's comment.
Terence,
Oh,
if
yes,
I
I will.
may, I
I
just
will
want
share
to.
the. Hi,
So
Nazgul.
can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Terence, I have something to add. I just want to support you on that way. The funny story that happened to you, and this is really the cultural, maybe, how can I say? This is the mentality that sometimes mm, may not accept the person who especially smiles early in the morning. We have an anecdote, like a joke, something like that. If you see
Know
some
it. Yeah.
early in the morning smiling, you know that he or she is a foreigner. This is kind of a funny
Exactly.
story.
Exactly. Exactly, exactly. And I actually, because I'm trying to learn Russian, I'm trying to learn Kazakh. When I get into the taxi, I always say hello as English as possible, so they don't try to speak Russian to me. But usually I get in, and I'm with my wife, and we get in, and she doesn't smile, and I'll go, "Доброе утро" to the driver and smile, "Good morning," and they're like, "Why?" Why are you doing it? Just,
But
I'm going to drive you. I'm going to
Terence,
drive you to your place. Don't speak to me.
sorry to interrupt you. I'm
Yeah.
just curious to know, how do you deal with this challenge? It sounds like a challenge to you. And how do you act? How
Mm,
do you adapt yourself? Or you can't change your personality, right? But you can do something with this just to pick up the new cultural system. So somehow to
exactly.
adapt yourself. So how do you do?
Exactly.
How do you
Well,
deal?
no, I'm still myself, and I have a really good translation app on the phone. And generally when I'm on my own going somewhere, they always try to speak to me. Some of them will say, "Are you English, Ingleski?" And I'll say, "Well, no, Irlandi," and they'll speak to me, and I'll say, then they start speaking to me, and I'll say, "Я только немного понимаю по-русски," and that's it. That's all I can say. For non-Russian speakers, I only speak a little Russian, but then they speak to me more, and then I'm like, I have to get the translation app out. But then they're looking at the app while they're driving. I'm like, please just drive, So I find, but it's a good point, Nazgul. But I've got a lot of good friends in Kazakhstan, and it's just when people don't know you, right? They're a bit more reserved. But then as soon as people know you, of course, it's like normal, smiling, etc. But yeah, you have to adapt yourself, and we'll come to that in the AAA model. Uh, I'm lucky that I've worked all over the world, and you have to adapt yourself to different situations. And being able to say something like, "I only speak a little Russian," or "please" and "thank you" and "good morning" can really break down barriers. Now, of course, it's very different when you're coaching, but yeah, for me, I think you've still got to be yourself, respect those differences, um, and just try to get on with it, I think. I see that Anna has her hand up.
Yes, I have a question. Hi, everyone. Can you please say maybe to make more examples where you use this framework? What kinds of clients come to you? Which problems or challenges they have when you use it? Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, Anna, this framework is for you as a coach to prepare, basically. And I would use it for dealing with anybody from any culture. So, like for example, a huge benefit I've had of living in China for so long is I work with local Chinese people, but I also work with a lot of people from the multinationals. So everyone is different. So I think for every coaching conversation I'm having, I'm thinking about this in a way. So I mean, for example, today I've worked with someone from the US. I worked with someone from the Singapore. Obviously, today we're all talking together from different places, right? So it's ongoing, and lots of examples. I'll give you an example. If you said to somebody in Russian, and anyone can answer this for me, or in Kazakh, if I said, "What do you think about this?" Or what do you think about okay, maybe you're trying to sell your coaching. What do you think about the price? And they say, let me think about it. So in Russian and Kazakh, does that mean let me think about it, or does it mean no? What would it mean?
Mean that
Nazgul?
it is
No.
expensive and they would think about it how how to say
Right,
no to you.
right. Kali, you're both right. In Chinese, it's always no. 我考虑一下, it's always no, right? Not just about price, about anything, because of being that indirect way. So when I'm coaching in Chinese, I have to be very, so Anna, for the example, I have to be very aware that I'm speaking to somebody in their native language, but also from a cultural perspective. So that's where, I mean, there's lots and lots of examples of it. But I have to be, for example, I have to think about, first of all, when I'm coaching in another language, then it's a lot more energy of the mind, right? And being much more aware, really looking more at body language and facial expressions because they change a little bit, right? Then it's my understanding of like the language they might use. So the second dimension would be the cognition. So for particularly in Chinese, it's a very indirect language. So I tend to be more direct to make them more direct. So they will be more direct in their answers, right? Then if we look at the sort of the metacognition, I have to think about examples that I've seen and how can that inform the questions I'm gonna ask them. And then the behavior really is that nonverbal. It's a smile is not always a smile, a nod is not always a nod. So we have to think about that when we're for the examples. I hope that helped you, Anna. And I see Anna Bernhard has her hand up as well.
I would like to add something on that. When you say it's like, and if you say I will think about it, it's a no, and that's basically a done conversation is basically more or less done. And I can give you an example from the German culture in that. If a German says no, it's the beginning of the discussion.
Right.
But this is where you start bringing your arguments,
Yeah.
and this is when you start discussing it and start the conviction work. And this is where certain cultures collide like this without even knowing that it's all about that.
Yeah, it's like we use the example of English, where it's a global language of business and communication. Everyone's using it in very, very different ways. Even the understanding, and even in the UK, people say, "What's a UK accent or what's standard English?" There isn't. There's 44 official dialects in the UK. So even then, we all grow up hearing them, right? So we can understand someone from Liverpool, and we can understand someone from maybe Newcastle, even though they have these strong accents. But everyone's using English in a different way at a different level. And even if you're coaching someone whose English is not their first language, so you still have to think about the questions you're asking, right? The questions might come across, maybe the vocabulary is too complicated or something like that. So and understanding no is the start of the conversation. If you go to Australia, yeah, no, yeah, and then no, yeah, no, right? They mean different things. And from the Russian, I'm learning as well, very badly. There's can be very indirect ways of saying, oh, and in English as well. The way you say something, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. So it's very, very different, even the way that people are using the language as well. And that's really great insight. And I didn't know that about German, basically. So this is really about for Anna, the first question, Anna, the examples. It's really about being prepared yourself to coach people in those different languages. I do have a coachee from Kazakhstan, who's Kazakh, and that's been very interesting for me to sort of coach him because he's quite indirect as well, and it's been a learning journey for me working with him in the same industry as Evgenia as well. Um, so if we look at the 4 pillars, let's look at the first one, which is CQ Drive. And Sasa, I did see your message. Yes, I will share the slides in case you didn't hear that. I will share the slides later. So let's look into the first one. This is Drive, right? This is your engine of cultural intelligence. It's your motivation. So without this, all the knowledge, all the strategy in the world will just sit there unused. So there's 3 components to your CQ Drive. So it's your intrinsic interest. And that's basically your genuine curiosity you feel, right? You really want to deal with people from different cultures, work in those different cultures, whether it's coaching or just for work or just for life, just for travel, right? It's that genuine curiosity about other cultures and the enjoyment of cultural differences, right? So your intrinsic interest is next. So this is what's the practical benefits of working across cultures? I mean, there's so many. Actually, let's open this up. Would anyone like to share in the chat box? Or open up your microphone? What are some of the practical benefits of working across cultures? Whether it's for coaching or for working.
Well, I will open my mic listening.
Thank
Because
you.
when you are surrounded with like people, you don't have so many drivers to listen
Right.
so deeply and think about what you hear, what you observe.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Sasa. Where are you based, Sasa?
I'm from Croatia, in Zagreb.
From Croatia. Okay, very nice. A very multinational group this evening. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. And guys, again, we're all here together. Let's share these perspectives today. That's fantastic. I can see the chat box. Anna, different new perspectives. Laurie, different ways of working mean different opportunities for learning and new ways of creating solutions. And different languages mean extended, refined meaning, right? So I find that, and I'm sure you all do as well, working in another language, thinking in another language changes the way you actually see the world, right? It really, really opens things up. And it would be amazing if everybody had that opportunity. Thank you so much, Sasa, and those that have commented. So the next part of your CQ Drive is this is your self-efficacy. So being confident in yourself to function effectively in cross-cultural situations. It's also other people seeing that you're effective. I'll give you an example. About 2 years ago, I did a chemistry call for a workshop on diversity, equity, and inclusion with the Chinese HR of a very large company, which I won't mention. So we did the whole hour just speaking in Chinese, talking about the program, talking about the design. And at the end of it, she said to me, "Oh, you're ideal for this, but we'd really want someone who speaks Chinese." And I just said to her, hold on, we've been speaking Chinese for the last hour. Was there something that you didn't understand? And she said, oh, actually, we would like to have a Chinese face. So I just paused and I said to her in Chinese, what's the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And her face just dropped. And she went, ah, okay. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So in the end, I actually did the workshop. But, so we also have to make sure that people have the confidence in us, not just our own efficacy as well. So as coaches, we need to model these three components. We need to cultivate that genuine curiosity about our clients' cultural backgrounds. And for all of you who've joined today, we can see that you have that curiosity as well. And really recognize the just immense value that diversity brings to our sessions, to our lives, and to our overall coaching practice as well. So there's reflection questions here at the bottom of the screen if you can see them. Just think about these for yourself, self-reflection. What excites me about working with culturally diverse clients? How do I respond when cultural differences create discomfort? What cultural learning opportunities am I actively seeking as well? Would anybody like to share any of those answers on those reflection questions? Doreen, not a single dull day. Surprises, good and bad, will pop out randomly due to differences in perspective. Actually, Doreen, from Malaysia, you're from an extremely culturally diverse country. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. I was in Malaysia in Penang in August to did a 2-day workshop, and then I actually spoke about cultural intelligence. And just even in a taxi or talking to people speaking 3, 4 languages, just like it's nothing, right? Growing up speaking these languages in these cultures. So I'd love to hear some of your ideas about cultural intelligence, Doreen, because Malaysia is so culturally integrated, I would say. Of course, there's challenges, but very integrated and just so multicultural.
Yes, we have three main races living in Malaysia, Malay, Chinese, and Indians, and
Mm.
there are many other smaller groups of race. So yes, we speak multiple language. I speak about 5,
Right.
including different dialects.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the main thing is just be kind with everybody, and then just listen first. Don't jump into
Okay.
conclusion, because
Okay.
different race, they will have different perspective about certain things. For example, I'm living right next to an Indian neighbor. I have a Malay
Okay.
neighbor on my right. Left is my
Mm.
Indian neighbor. So there are different culture. They celebrate different festivals.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of tolerance. We have to give a lot of tolerance. For example, every evening, my neighbors will start ringing the bells for prayers.
Oh,
Well,
right.
so it's something that you just have to tolerate. So it's a lot of tolerance involved when you live with different
Yeah.
cultures.
Okay.
And personally, why I
Mm,
joined this
mm.
talk tonight is because I am working remotely. I am actually managing a group of people in Thailand. So I'm in
Okay.
Malaysia, but I manage the whole group of people. They are Thai. So
Yeah.
it's a really different culture as well, although we are just a neighboring country. So that's why I find it difficult also sometimes to communicate well with them. Like you say just now, the way they see things, the way they respond to things are different. Their work culture is also different. What they expect from the managers are also different. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It really is. And also within Thailand, I can't remember the exact amount, but when we talk about gestures within the Thai culture, there's like I think 5 different levels of smile, and it's very, very, very subtle, right? So disagreeing, agreeing, happy. So And that's very hard, isn't it, Doreen, when you're remote
Yeah.
as well. It's even
Yes.
harder when you're living there as well. And you know, different beliefs, right? Different beliefs,
Yes.
different sort of thoughts of hierarchy. And what's really important here, there's no right or wrong, right? As we can see in Malaysia, right? It's very tolerant. There's no right or wrong. It's understanding and being kind
Yeah.
and trying to adapt. We'll come to the model in a little while, the AAA model. And we'll see how to be adaptable as well. So thank you very much for sharing. So let's dive into the second framework, second part of the framework. So this is your engine, CQ Drive, right? So CQ knowledge is the map, right? If CQ Drive is the engine. This pillar gives us the cognitive foundation, the frameworks we need to understand how cultures are similar and different at the same time. So like yin and yang, we can take from the Chinese culture, right? Night and day. You know, we're talking about key dimensions like power distance, which affect how people view hierarchy, or individualism versus collectivism, which shapes people's goals. So if we can understand these dimensions, it's crucial for us as coaches. So for example, if you know a client comes from a high power distance culture, it means we need to create extra safety for them and challenge assumptions or disagree. So we can use this knowledge as a starting point for exploration. So not for stereotyping, right? It helps us ask more powerful, culturally relevant questions. But knowing the map and having the motivation doesn't mean you can navigate the terrain effectively. So you need a strategy. So some examples here, right? So key cultural dimensions to understand: direct versus indirect, task versus relationship, time orientation. So monochronic, so linear, everything starts on time, finishes on time. Polychronic, flexible, you know, deadlines are more flexible. Direct and indirect communication, I find, are the biggest challenges for people to overcome. And that's something that I would recommend. Actually, there's a very good book, if you haven't read it, called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. It's really excellent. It's not technical at all. She is from a small town in America, ended up studying French, and then went to Paris and became a cross-cultural consultant. So a lot of good resources on her website as well. So if you think about it, there's the example on the screen. In high power distance cultures, many so Asian, Middle Eastern, Latin American contexts, clients may be less comfortable challenging authority or expressing disagreement directly. So as coaches, we do need to create that safe space for them. So I find this a lot where we have people maybe in Beijing working with people in LA, and they find it hard to say no directly or to challenge things directly based on that cultural piece as well. And as Evgenia said, the Hofstede model as well, yes. So Culture Map, the audio book is excellent as well. So next, we look at the strategies I just said, right? So we have the CQ strategies. This is your metacognitive dimension. So the part of your brain that plans and monitors. This is where you consciously prepare for the cross-cultural interactions. Check your assumptions in real time and adjust your mental models afterwards. So for coaches, this means preparing for a session by considering the client's cultural context. So it means staying acutely aware during the conversation, even more so if it's not your own culture. Noticing when a cultural assumption might be creeping into your coaching. And we all assume things, we all do, right? We all have a little bit of bias, we all stereotype. So it's really important that we check that at the door. So before you make a judgment or assumption, pause and ask yourself, what cultural factors might be influencing this situation? What am I assuming based on my own cultural lens? This strategic pause allows us to pivot and ask a better question. Strategy is about the internal mental work for you as a coach. Okay. So I've got some of the phrases there. Oh, sorry about the something wrong with the slide there. Any questions? Any thoughts? Okay.
Terry,
All right, we'll move on.
we have a hand raised, Lori.
Oh, okay. Hi, Laurie.
I no, just what I would add on the hierarchy aspect specifically for us as coaches, that for people who have a more vertical, we have a much higher risk of them expecting anything we say to be rule.
Yeah.
So we have to be extra careful around that. But also, at least I know that's for me where I'm currently finding it a bit more difficult, and I already did before, is also really explaining, no, I'm not going to give you answers, etc. Can take a much stronger effort because there's really an expectation of delivery of knowledge and wisdom instead of the other way around. And that specifically is, for me right now, something I struggle with in these types of contexts.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Laurie. I just so I'm on one of the major coaching platforms, and I've suddenly got quite a large number of clients from the same company, from the Chinese team, and every one of them came on and said, "What are you going to train me in? What are you going to teach me?" Every single one of them. So I think that's a problem from their HR. But I see this here as well when I'm doing like facilitating a workshop. Like the first thing I will say, even if it's in English, I will say, 今天我不是你的老师. So today I'm not your teacher. I'm not your teacher, because they will look at you as a teacher to give the answers and really go through everything step by step. So there's a big cultural lens there, Laurie, as well. You know, people are expecting you to impart knowledge rather than really coach them. So it's Laurie, no problem with the camera, no problem at all. Whatever everybody's comfortable with. So some cultural pauses there as well. We're going to go to a breakout room in a moment as well. So now we have to look at our action, right? So this is where your rubber meets the road, right? This is your behavioral dimension, your ability to adapt your verbal and non-verbal behavior appropriately. So it's the visible manifestation of your cultural intelligence. This means flexing your communication style, perhaps being more indirect or more formal, depending on the client's preference or culture. It means being mindful also of non-verbal cues like eye contact, right? So eye contact is so tricky, I would say. You know, I would say that mainland China, about 2 seconds is appropriate eye contact. But if that was in the UK and someone looked away so quickly, I'd be thinking, what are they hiding? Or what are they trying to pull over on me? So I'm just seeing there, misconception of coaching versus training. Yeah. Oh, so also in Southeast Europe as well. Oh, interesting. Coaching versus training. Oh, interesting. Okay. So we need to expand our behavioral repertoire. So not abandon our authentic self, right? So for instance, with clients from indirect cultures, we might use more stories or more hypothetical questions just to help them bring out their awareness rather than direct questions. And this is how we can translate understanding into effective connection. So those are the 4 pillars. How do we integrate them into a practical coaching model? So this is my model that I developed
Before
myself.
we move on, I would like to add something on the
Sure.
topic of eye contact.
Yeah.
This is the topic that I burned for is neurodiversity. Neurodiversity. This is the topic of autism, ADHD, OCD, bipolar, and so on and so on and so on. And quite often neurodiversity can overlap with culture. And in certain cultures, eye contact is demanded. And for people with the traits of not being able to make eye contact, it's become extra difficult to live. And in other cultures that are more, let's say, more introverted, certain things are more easy to handle than in others. So it's another lens that needs to be added, because in certain cultures, eye contact is required, or handshaking, or even kisses. And for certain people, this is too much body contact, and it doesn't have to do anything
Sure.
with the culture, but has something to do with their own neurodiversity profile. And this is where the whole complexity comes into play.
Mm. And of course, it's, as I said earlier, when we are talking about culture, you can have national culture, company culture, and individual culture as well. So not everybody fits the models, right? Thank you so much, Anna. So looking now, this is a AAA model that I developed. It came out of cross culture, but it can be used for most things. And because a lot of models are quite complicated, and I wanted to make something that was easy to remember, right? So it's a practical framework, right, for integrating the 4 pillars into coaching conversations, into leadership conversations, into feedback conversations as well. And it simplifies the application of CQ, or maybe it makes it more practical. Simplify is maybe the wrong word. So the first 8 is awareness. This is about unpacking our own cultural lenses and helping ourselves and our clients recognize how their culture shapes their communication and behavior, and also being aware that there's a difference. The second A is appreciation. So it's not just tolerance. We've got to move beyond tolerance to actively leveraging diversity as a strategic asset. And also it's remembering just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. Particularly if you're living and working in a different culture, you need to appreciate and be aware things are differently. So the way people manage time is different to your home culture. The way people communicate is different. We have WeChat, we have WhatsApp, we have Telegram, we have email, we have Teams. Example, in China, nobody uses email outside of work. Nobody uses personal emails really, unless they're signing up for something. People are using WeChat all the time. So we need to reframe our cultural differences, complementary strengths that can really help us fuel innovation. And then the final A is adaptation. This is about developing communication agility and adjusting our coaching approach based on the cultural context. So supporting our clients in building their own cultural flexibility, but also something I say to a lot of people, because it infuriates me a little bit, because I see people coming into China a lot and they're like, well, back home we do it this way, or why is it this way, or why is it that way? So the adaptation for me is, if you're living and working in another culture, you're the one that has to adapt, not the people in that culture. It's something that sort of really makes me think when I go to different places, right? Yeah, Doreen as well, generation gaps. That's also part of culture, right? Generation gaps. Also, if you look at, in Malaysia, for example, Doreen, people of a higher age have higher respect, or they seem better at doing their jobs. So you might have engineers in their 50s and 60s, and having their manager in their 30s, and the engineers aren't listening because of that cultural lens of the age, right? So we see that a lot too. So as I said, culture is not just language. It's not just where you're from, right? And I'd also like to just say that, culture is not genetic, it's acquired. So you can grow up in a completely different country and still have that culture as well. So the AAA model transforms coaching from a one-size-fits-all approach to a truly culturally intelligent practice. And for me, the way in my practice, this really does enhance every single core competency from ITF, for me personally. Okay. So we're going to go into a breakout room. So if you'd like to take a screenshot, so we're going to do random breakout rooms. If you'd like to take a screenshot. So, and I'll just do random groups, okay? Just a couple of questions. So to help you we probably won't do 12 minutes. We'll probably do about 10 minutes, right? To help you integrate CQ drive and knowledge, strategy, and action, this is by reflecting on your own habits and coaching blind spots. So in groups, which of the 4 pillars is currently strongest for you and why? Drive, knowledge, strategy, or action. Which pillar do you rely on least when coaching clients from different cultural backgrounds? Why do you think that is? Share one real coaching moment where cultural differences created a misunderstanding. What could have helped you? And what is one behavior you can adapt immediately in your coaching practice to better honor your client's culture? Would you like me to go back to just show the slide with the 4 pillars again? Yeah? Yeah, I'll go back and show that. And then, okay, so there's the 4 pillars. If you'd like to take a screenshot of that also. Okay, so you've got it. And I'm going to just put you into random breakout rooms. Do encourage you to put on your cameras in the breakout rooms. Of course, it's not mandatory.
While working in the breakout rooms, the recording will be paused. And we have 22 people actually.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right, I'll just do them randomly. And we'll just do that. We'll just do this for about 10 minutes, everybody. So you can just take your time and share. Okay, I'm going to create them now. And we'll have about 5 to 6 participants per room. Well, let me see. Actually, we'll do 6 rooms. No, we'll do 5 rooms. So 4 to 5 people per room. All right. Going into those now. Oh. I should move you automatically. So we'll just welcome everybody back. Just give them they have 60 seconds and it'll bring them back. Bring them back in 9 seconds. Here we go.
Sort of success.
So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We closed the rooms a little bit early there just because we want to stay within the 90 minutes. But hopefully you had a good bit of sharing. I've got a couple of questions, and if anybody would like to just debrief a little bit. What surprised you about your own cultural defaults or your own cultural standards? What patterns did you see with in those groups there? And what does this tell us about coaching across cultures? Would anyone like to share? Doreen?
I was in a
Doreen,
group with Jirina. I was in a group with Jirina, and she's
that's lucky.
yeah, and she's from Thailand.
Yeah.
So
I didn't plan that. It was random. It was completely random. So
oh, okay. Yeah, so she's from Thailand, and I can see the the thing that I found out is that she listens well. She's very patient.
yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the good qualities of Thai people. They are very patient. So yeah, so I can see that in Jirina.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else like to share? So what surprised you? What patterns did you see? Anything about coaching across cultures? Anybody else care to share?
Another cross-cultural thing that was challenging in my group, for example, is the global situation that is ongoing right now, that one of my teammates was not able to say anything, so she had to write it down because of the power outages and the attacks that are currently happening.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And another challenging part is that my other partner in my group was also moving right now on her way home. And so primarily I was talking by myself. I was explaining my point of view. And this is one of the things where I learned in the past. Sometimes I have to jump into the role and take over things where things in other parts of the world don't function, and in those horrible, difficult situations, try to make everybody feel as comfortable as possible with the current situation where they're at.
Mm. Yeah, that's also a challenge as well.
Mm.
Anna, what does this tell us about coaching across cultures? If we're talking about purely just coaching.
Be kind, listen, and be open.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else care to share? So what surprised you? Any patterns you saw? Okay. All right. Well, hopefully you had some good conversation there. Okay. So yeah, Doreen, it means don't trust a smile. Don't trust a smile. So don't be confident when someone's smiling, basically. So it could mean different things. That's what it means. I just wrote something in Thai, and I didn't write the Thai. I copied and pasted it. I don't speak any Thai. So hopefully you got a good conversation going there, everybody. So we've looked at cultural intelligence as a strategic imperative, and we've explored the 4 pillars. So let's directly connect this with the professional foundation, the ICF core competencies. I'm not going to read through these all. We're going to share the recording, and we're going to share the PDF with you. All right. But this is where the CQ moves from theory to the heart of practice. So cultural intelligence doesn't just sit alongside the competencies. In my opinion, it strengthens every single one of them, especially ethical practice. So if you think about it, respecting cultural differences in values and decision making is really fundamental to ethical coaching. So when we can cultivate trust and safety, we must recognize that trust is built differently across cultures. So for some cultures, it's built quickly through shared tasks. For others, it takes more time, it takes more relationship building first. CQ enhances our ability to listen actively by helping us really attune to what's said and what is not said in different communication. So sometimes things go unsaid, right? Especially in indirect cultures. So when we listen actively, really listen actively, so cameras on, etc., it really helps us to really inform the questions we're asking from a cultural lens. So ultimately, a culturally intelligent coach is better equipped to really evoke awareness and facilitate client growth because they can help clients explore the cultural influences on their challenges and adapt goals to be culturally relevant. So CQ here is a central hub that makes our coaching really inclusive and really powerful. So let's see how this plays out in the real world with a couple of case studies. So the first case study, bridging hierarchical communication styles. It brings to life a challenge that this is a real life challenge I saw when I was facilitating a group coaching. Was about navigating hierarchy and communication styles. And it's a really common issue across Asia and Central Asia. Well, everywhere really, right? So I was working with a Japanese Korean financial firm, and the core problem was a clash between these really 2 high power distant cultures that still they communicated very differently, even though they were high power distance. So the Japanese team really favored indirect communication and decision by consensus, while the Korean team was more direct and wanted faster decisions. Now, the friction here wasn't about bad intentions. It was a cultural misalignment, and it cost time and money. So the coaching intervention focused on the CQ drive first, so showing leaders the business impact of this cultural gap. Then the CQ knowledge was used to map the differences and CQ strategy to create shared protocols. The result was a 65% improvement in collaboration because the leaders learned to adapt their CQ action. So I was able to create a bridge between the two styles, not changing who they were, but they expanded their repertoire of behavior. So this can show us when we coach for CQ, we can accelerate results. So whether it's personal or business results. So here's the intervention here. And again, you can see that a little bit later. Most people would think that Korean and Japanese communication style will be very, very similar. Not all the time, right? I've got an example. We had the American arm and the Korean arm of the same company here in Shanghai for a workshop, and we were talking about the not wanting to say no. Now, crucially, the gentleman from the Korean side was in his 60s.
Русский
Right.
парень.
Hello? Is somebody speaking?
No, I think it was just
Oh,
an
okay.
accident. Mhm.
So, example, they were both called John, actually. And John from the States was saying to John from South Korea, why, whenever I'm trying to get something done or a change, it takes weeks to reply or you don't reply. And John from South Korea said, John, if it's 3 weeks and I haven't replied, it's a no. But I want to just be polite and respectful. And then John from America said, just tell me, then I can move on. And then we don't know. It's not about offending me. It's kind of we can't do it. Interestingly, there was a group of younger people from the same company in South Korea. And they said, well, actually, no, we would just tell you directly. So even there within the same culture, the same company, the different generations are communicating in different ways. So that's something that we need to understand there as well. So, but what happens when the cultural complexity is even greater? So the next case illustrates the power of embedding this cultural intelligence into an entire coaching culture across a really, truly global organization. So I was working with a technology multinational. They had operations from Singapore to Saudi Arabia to Germany. I mean, they had every cultural dimension imaginable at play. And a lot of companies do now, actually. The challenge that we had here was fragmentation. So, and I see this a lot nowadays, right? And probably Doreen, you probably have this as well, working with people in different countries, right? And particularly remotely, we have this big challenge of fragmentation. So teams struggle with miscommunication, low psychological safety, and innovation can really stall. And it happened here because people were afraid to speak up across the cultural lines. So here the intervention wasn't just a training program. It was a deep coaching cultural initiative. So it involved training internal coaches in CQ methodologies and integrating my AAA model trying to integrate it into all leadership models. And it was a really dramatic result. It was a 70% reduction in miscommunication over time and a real significant increase in innovation and psychological safety. So this example shows that cultural intelligence here was the multiplier. When you coach leaders to be culturally intelligent, you transform the entire organization. You really turn cultural diversity from a liability into a real powerful competitive advantage. Now, here, let's shift gears and give you some tools that you can use immediately in your own practice, because I'm aware of time. And again, the key insight here was building a coaching culture grounded in cultural intelligence, transform the teams from culturally fragmented to culturally synergistic. That wasn't my phrase. That was from the American boss, basically. So here's some coaching questions. I'm not going to read through them all, but just some examples. So we've seen the impact of CQ. Now let's build the foundation. The first step in culturally intelligent coaching is always self-awareness. So you can't coach a client through their cultural challenges if you haven't explored your own cultural lens. So here's some powerful questions that are designed to help you and your clients unpack that lens. So we have cultural identity. So what cultures have shaped you? Then we have influences. How does your culture shape your communication style? Because we often think in our universal way, right? Next, we're looking at biases. So what cultural behaviors make you uncomfortable and why? You know, that learning discomfort is really that discomfort is actually a learning opportunity. And then we would look at cultural flexibility. So how do you respond when your cultural values conflict with others? So these are just some examples. I encourage you to to use your own questions or these questions in your own reflection this week. So the really essential starting point for building your CQ drive and your CQ knowledge. Once we understand ourselves, we can better understand others. So once you have that cultural awareness, the next tool helps you map the differences between cultures. And that's really a key part of knowledge and strategy. So this is a key cultural dimensions mapping exercise. It's got the tool there and how to use it in your coaching, how to apply it. So please feel free to use it if you want to. It's a visual way to help clients. And yeah, I'm not very good at making slides, so it's not very beautiful. So please feel free to take it yourselves and redesign it into a more visually appealing way. But it's a visual way to help your clients understand where they might be experiencing friction in cross-cultural situations. So it's the 6 key dimensions, right? So direct versus indirect communication, task versus relationship. So it's from Hofstadter. And we plot where the different cultures are involved fall on the spectrum. So example, if your client is from a highly monochronic linear time culture, so like, time is a line, start on time, finishing on time. The coaching conversation really shifts from they're always late to how can we bridge this time difference, for example. So the tool helps us move away from personal judgment and towards that strategic adaptation that we need. And the client needs to understand, the coach needs to understand. It's a fantastic way to really evoke that awareness and plan your CQ action. So let's look at how to apply strategic thinking to one of the most sensitive areas of coaching, and that's feedback. So a lot of the coaching conversations I've had, because it's coming towards the end of the year, is feedback, right? 360 reviews. How can I best put this across, right? And what I find is a lot of people that I'm coaching in China particularly, all the feedbacks waits till the end of the year. So whether it's developmental feedbacks or the negative or the positive, the motivational, it's all suddenly an avalanche of good news and bad news. So it can be like a bit of a shock to the person getting it. So I personally think that feedback is really sensitive, right? It's where cultural differences often, they're smashed together. If we get it wrong, we can damage trust or even cause a client to lose face. So the framework here, the cross-cultural feedback framework, helps us adapt our approach. So it's built around 5 Ps to ensure the feedback is culturally responsive and effective. So first, we've got to prepare, right? Understand the client's cultural context. Do they prefer direct or indirect communication? Is feedback usually private or public, for example? Second, always seek permission. So for example, asking, may I share an observation? This creates safety, especially in high power distance cultures, where I work a lot in the high power distance cultures, where unsolicited advice can feel disrespectful. I do find when clients understand what coaching is, they're very receptive to this, though. But in the day-to-day working environment, it's a bit different, right? Third, offer feedback as your perspective, not as an absolute truth. So that if I'm coaching somebody when they're saying, how do I give this feedback to somebody? I might ask them to reframe it and say it from a perspective. So from my perspective, I noticed, rather than you did this, right? So this invites dialogue rather than judgment. The fourth is pause. And we all know this, pause in our coaching conversations. Allow that silence for processing. Allow that silence that good tension to formulate, right? And it's really crucial for clients from indirect cultures. They need time to think about their nuanced response, right? It's not what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. And then finally, we want to partner with the client to co-create the next steps. This honors their agency, it ensures the action plan is culturally relevant. So using this 5Ps framework can transform feedback from a potential cultural landmine to a powerful tool for growth. So I'm conscious of time for everybody. Let's look at how we can build this into a continuous practice. So I'm not going to read all of this out either for you, right? So we've covered theory, we've covered case studies, we've covered tools. Here's the most important part. Making cultural intelligence a continuous and ethical practice. So building a culturally responsive practice is not a one-time training. It's a commitment to that continuous development across all 4 pillars. So to expand your CQ drive, for example, you must intentionally seek out diverse coaching opportunities and reflect on what genuinely excites you about cross-cultural work. To deepen your CQ knowledge, you need to systematically study those cultural frameworks, not just skim them, and learn about the specific cultures you engage with most often. For the strategy piece, make the cultural pause a non-negotiable part of your preparation and reflection process. And to really enhance that action, experiment with different communication styles and actively seek feedback on your cultural adaptability. So a great way to do this is through peer coaching, right? And then finally, remember the AAA model. So awareness, appreciation, adaptation. Start every session with the awareness of your own cultural lens, actively appreciate the client's cultural strengths, and be ready to adapt your approach, but be authentic to yourself. This is a commitment to lifelong cultural learning, and it strengthens your ethical practice and truly elevates your impact. But how do we start the journey? Here's a practical roadmap. I'm not going to read it all out for you. You'll get a copy of it, right? But first, we want to commit to self-assessment. Then we want to think about short-term actions. And then we want to think about our long-term actions as well. So you'll get a copy of this, as we said. I just want to take a quick zoom out before we come to the end and talk about the bigger picture. I feel very strongly that cultural intelligence, it's not just a nice to have skill, it's a strategic advantage, and it creates a powerful ripple effect. So when you as a coach develop your CQ, I really feel, and I know for myself, you'll experience a real personal transformation. You expand your worldview, you deepen your capacity for authentic connection, and it leads to real individual impact, profound impact, I would say, on your clients, because they can gain the cultural confidence to navigate their own real complex global challenges. And, when your clients succeed, it creates systematic change within their organizations, and it can really make more inclusive cultures and stronger global performance. So I was going to do another breakout, but for time, we won't do that, okay? So here's where your journey starts. So let me just distill that into the essential insights. Remember, cultural intelligence I feel is essential for every coach operating today the way it's the global world. It's the core competency that allows us to navigate complexity, build trust. The 4 pillars: drive, knowledge, strategy, action. They provide a comprehensive framework for your development. You need all 4 working together. And then my AAA model, awareness, appreciation, adaptation. It's a practical guide for applying CQ in coaching, conversation, in daily work, in daily business, and even communication. Do we have time for questions? I know that I'm running over a little bit. Are there any questions? Would anybody like to ask? Here's some for you to reflect on. Okay, some topics to explore later for you. But and some recommended courses, resources for you as well. So we've got the culture map on there as well. Here's my contact details, and also ICF Kazakhstan if you want to become a member, for example. Any questions? And I am aware that we have 1 minute left, but I'm happy to take questions if you're happy. The resources, yes. And Dilara, we will also send out a copy of the slides for you as well, but I'll share that again. There you go, Dilara. Any questions, any insights? Would love to hear from you all.
Terry, I think the reactions, all those hearts and thumbs up that you're seeing now are the indications of the appreciation and
very
respect
nice, thank you.
for your time, for your expertise, for your passion about the subject. Thank you very much. It's been super helpful, and look what a wonderful space we all have created. Truly multicultural, truly cross-cultural, and yeah. See how many thanks are there in the chat, and thank you all
so
people for choosing to be with us with ICF Kazakhstan today. Thank you.
Ahmed. Thank you, everybody. Hope to connect with you, and then we will, again, I'll change these into a PDF, and they'll be shared with you in the... Jarina can trust your smile. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll share them with you in the next...
I hope we could connect outside of this space. Bye-bye.
My LinkedIn is there, if you want to do that. And I can write my WhatsApp number if you hear.
We are in the WhatsApp channel. We're good.
Oh, right, there you go. Oh, yes, of course. Of course. Yeah, everybody, please feel free to share your LinkedIns. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, for your input as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time. I am stopping the recording.
Thank you so much. And Jenny, thank you so much. Thank you so much for arranging